Okay, so today's daf is daf Samach Aleph in Chullin. We had a nice interlude yesterday with some interesting agaditas, including some of the most famous in all of Shas, in connection with why the moon is small and the sun is large. Um, and now we're back to the symbols or the signs that an animal is kosher. And we pick up on the bottom line of Samach Amabet, where it says between the two dots, Simanei Ha'of Lo Namru, that the Torah never tells us the signs for a kosher bird. Now, in fact, what it does do is it lists 24 different birds that are not kosher, but it does not tell us sort of what makes a kosher bird. So the Gemara asks about that. Vilo, 1 second, you're telling me that we didn't learn from the Torah what birds are kosher, Vatanya, but how we have a Brisa that derives from the Torah the different characteristics of a kosher bird. Namely, there are four characteristics of a kosher bird. So nesher, because after all, the Torah in this is Vayikra Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Yud Gimel and Dvarim Perek Yud Daled Pasuk Yud Bet. It goes through the list of the non-kosher birds, and nesher is one of them. And we say the following as we turn to Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Ma nesher miyuchad, just as a nesher is unique, she'ein lo etzba yisera. Then now we're going to go through the four qualities of what make a kosher bird, and a nesher, often translated as an eagle, but it most likely is not. Because it doesn't actually the characteristics that we're matching up don't actually apply to that. But in any event, Nesher, probably a some kind of falcon or hawk, that of course is more frequently found in the land of Israel. In any event, Nesher miyuchad she'ein lo etzba. It's unique in that it does not have this extra toe, etzba yisera, excuse me, v'zefek, and it does not have a zefek, which is the crop. That's where food initially goes after it is immediately swallowed. Ve'ein kurkavan, ve'ein kurkavano niklaf, and its kurkavan, which is the gizzard, does not have a membrane on it that can be peeled. Vidores and the ochel. And when it comes to how it eats, it claws and it eats. So each of these four qualities, the etzba yisera, the zefek, the kurkavano niklaf, and the dores v'ochel, those are the four characteristics that will determine whether a bird is kosher. When it comes to the nesher, it lacks the first three and it has the fourth. Those are the qualities of the non-kosher bird. Tameh. And so as a result, that bird is not kosher. It's impure. Kol kiyotzebo tameh. Similarly, any other bird that is missing that does not have the extra toe, that does not have the crop, that does not have the membrane on the gizzard, and that does not, and that claws and eats. If it has all four of those qualities, that is going to be a tameh bird, a bird that is not kosher. On the other hand, and let's take a look at Rashi, right? Rashi helps us out here. Top Rashi on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. As I promised Mark, we'll have some Rashis today. In fact, it's wise to keep one finger on Rashi because we're going to do the first four Rashis at least on this daf. So Nesher, who's Karpetimeyan? It is one of the mentioned birds among the non-kosher birds. Vidanin binyan av hemenu, and we are going to derive a binyan av, where we derive from one situation to other situations, and we're going to derive from it. Dema nesher miyuchad, that just as a nesher is unique, de'ain lo echad mikol hasimanim halalu, it doesn't have any of the four characteristics. Again, the four characteristics being the added toe, the crop, the gizzard membrane, and not clawing and eating, vitame, and so that's why it is going to be tameh. Af kol she'ein lo echad mikol hasimanim. So similarly, anything else that lacks all four of these signs, halalu, min nesherhu, that is going to be considered a type of nesher, vitameh, and it will be impure. It will be not kosher. Aval oaf sheyesh lo echad mikol elu. But if it has any one of these four indicators, tahor, it is tahor. The kol shekein shnayim o shlosha, and certainly if it has two or three indicators, o kulam, or if it has all four indicators, with one humongous major exception, chutz mi ofas hamiforshim b'parsha, that except if it's actually listed in the Torah, because again, as we said at the beginning, the Torah lists 24 kinds of birds. All 24 of the kinds of birds that are listed are not kosher. And so if it's one of the 24 birds, then it's of course not kosher. But if it is not one of those 24 birds, well then, if it has any of the four characteristics that the nesher is missing all of them, well then that will be a kosher animal. Shigzeris akazavu, because all those other 24 birds, or 23 of the other birds that do have a characteristic that is consistent with a kosher bird, even though those 23 do have some indicator that would in other birds make it kosher, in those birds, because the Torah specifically says that they're not kosher, they are not kosher. As we will see over the course of today. Tameim, that they are tamei. V'hai af lo marabi elamin nesher. And we were going to see that we are not going to learn from any of those birds. We're not going to make a binyan av from any of those birds other than the nesher. De'ain ov tamei ba'olam ela kaf dalad ha'amurin kan. Because there are only 24 not kosher birds, and it is only those birds that are mentioned in the Torah. Kedetanya l'kaman, as we will see. And so as a result, when we say that there is another bird that lacks all four of these simanim, that's why we say that it is a brand, it is within the family of nesher. Lefikach, mana hakazav b'tameim. And so that's why the Torah just said the tamei birds, because there are so many more birds. Ubahana kafdalid, when it came to these 24, amrinan de isbahu bekulo simanim tahara chutz min hanesher. And the other 23 birds that are mentioned in the Torah all have at least one of the characteristics that we just mentioned, meaning that it either has the added toe, or it has the crop, or it has the gizzard that can be peeled, or it does not claw and eat its food. And so as a result, if not for the fact that the Torah specifically listed it, we would have said, based on the learning from Nesher, that it is a kosher animal. So now back into the Gemara. And so we go to the discussion of Torin. So we are here we go. Where is it? 1, 2, 3 lines down, middle of the line on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Torin, middle of the line. Torin, sheyesh lahen etzba yisera. A tor, often translated as some kind of pigeon or turtle dove, or just plain dove. Sheyesh lahen etzba yisera. It does have the extra toe, vizefek, and it does have a crop. v'korkovan niklaf, and it does have the membrane on its gizzard. V'ein dorsin v'oklin, and it does not claw and eat. So tahorin, that they are tahor. Av kol kayotzav and tahorin, and so too any other bird that has all four signs will also be tahor. Now we will point out that that effectively creates a contradiction between the first part of the brisa and the second part of the brisa, because the first part of the brisa indicated that all you need is one of the four qualities to be kosher, and the second part of the brisa, it teaches that you need all four qualities. But in the meantime, what did we see? We see that the Torah that we learn from the Torah what the qualities are of a kosher bird. So why did you tell me in the Mishnah, Simani ha'of lo nemru, that they don't say the kosher qualities of a bird? So that's the question. Let's take a look at the next Rashi because it tells us about the Torim. Torim mana kasuf l'tahara. The Torah specifically says that these birds are tahor because we can bring them as sacrifices. Umehan, and from them atadan binyanav lukulan. We can then learn to all other birds. Va'af al gav dekashya sefer l'reisha. Even though you could ask the question 1 second, the end of this brisa seems to contradict the beginning of the brisa. Dereisha machshar afilu b'chad siman. Based on the learning from the Nesher, where only the bird is not kosher if it has all four negative qualities, and therefore if it has one positive quality, it's sufficient. V'seifa lo machshar ad de'ika kulho. But in the end of it, it seems that when we compare it to the Torin, it seems like you would need to have all four qualities. So Reisha Dafka, the Seifa Lakama Mefarshla. Really, the beginning of this Mishnah is what we're going to learn from. The end, we will see what you learned from it, but it is not actually telling us that in order to be kosher, you need all four positive qualities. So Amar Abaye, back into the Gemara, as we are on the 1 to 6 line, beginning of the line. Amar Abaye, lo nemar perushan midivrei Torah. No, you're right that we end up learning these four qualities, but they are not explicitly said in the Torah. Elam midivrei sofrim. They are just rabbinically derived from the Torah and not actually in the Torah. So let's take a look at Rashi. Next Rashi, Perushan. Lo nisparshu hasimanim mamish b'Torah. It does not actually say these four qualities in the Torah. Ella midamana torin b'tahorin, but rather since it refers to the tor in connection with the clean animals, v'hani itnahu bahu umana nesh, and so we can learn from that one umana nesher b'tameim, and it counts the nesher among the tamei. Uba arba simanim halalu hein chalukin, and here these four qualities are the four distinguishing qualities between the two. Shma mina hein simanei tara. So we see that these are the four qualities that make for a potentially tahor bird. And so that is how we learn it. And so we do have qualifications, except that they are not explicit in the Torah. So Tani Rabbi Chia, back into the Gemara. Rabbi Chia, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down in the middle of the line. Tani Rabbi Chia, Of haba b'siman echad tahor. So again, we already learned this principle because we saw it in the very beginning of the brisa that we cited a few moments ago, that if you have a bird that has one of any of the four simanim, that is going to be a kosher animal. And Rashi explains, Of haba lifanenu b'siman echad shel tahara, as long as it has one of the four qualities, meaning it has the added toe, it has the crop, its gizzard has the peel, or it does not claw and eat its food. Well, then tahor, it's going to be tahor, it's going to be a kosher animal. The kol shekain imba b'shnayim, and certainly if it has two qualities, shlosha, or three qualities, Ubilvad sheyakir bo she'enu esrim va'arba'a hakesubin. Of course, you have to know that it's not one of the 24 that are written in the Torah. So that's where the problem lies, right? When we have the question of whether or not a turkey is a kosher animal, and the rabbis ended up saying yes, it is kosher. The issue is that how do we know that the turkey isn't one of the 24 that are listed? And so it's only because we have sort of an understanding of what are likely to be kosher and what are not likely to be kosher that we were able to make that determination. And Rav Moshe has his psak that I believe that it is one of the kosher animals, and that is why most will eat turkey. Most will eat yes a turkey. So Lafish,
Rabbi Yaakov held differently.
what was that?
I think Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky held differently.
Yeah,
I remember.
That could well be. That could very well be. But I think most kosher supermarkets do include turkey among the things that they sell. All right, Lafisha ain't domel l'nesher. Again,
something, David.
yes, what did I mention? A turkey.
Something happened last week. Turkey beat USA.
Oh, yes, but that was the country turkey, not the animal turkey. I'm talking about the animal turkey. Now they spell them differently. It used to be that they spelled. They're playing again tomorrow. The United States is playing. Yeah. Okay, got to make sure to watch that. All right. So why is it that it's that if it has one quality that is kosher, it's going to be sufficient? Lafisha ain't domel nesher. Back into the Gemara because it's not comparable to a nesher. Nesher delays like klal. A nesher has no signs. Hu delo tefel. So that's what you can't eat. Ha'ika, if you have any signs, the isle chad. If it even has one sign, techel, then you can eat it. All right. So now we're going to go through three efforts, maybe three yet. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, 4 efforts to try and say, hey, how come you're learning from the nesher? Maybe we should learn from a different animal and require more than one of the characteristics. V'leilef mitorin. Why not learn from the Torah? Right? Meaning, even the Brisa that we cited earlier does learn from the Torah. In fact, it makes it sound like, and Rashi pointed out the apparent contradiction between the beginning of the Brisa that we cited earlier and the end. It sounds like we do learn from the Torah. So why not learn that you need and say the following? Ma Torin de'ika kulhu arba. When it comes to the Torah, it has all 4 qualities. Af hachanami ad de'ika kulhu arba. Maybe you need to have all 4 qualities in order for a bird to be kosher. No, that doesn't make sense to say, because after all, the Torah lists 24 different birds that are not kosher. Im kain shar ophos tameyin dekasav rachmana lamali. Well, why bother with listing all of the other 23? Because 23 of the birds that are listed in the Torah have, as not kosher, have at least one quality of that is similar to the Torah. And so as a result, if in fact all you need to have all 4 qualities, well, then you don't need to list any of these birds in the Torah, because all of them would be obviously not kosher because they don't have all 4. And so as a result, that shows that that's why we need to list them, as Rashi tells us. Shar ophos tamei and lamali. We're in the first of the wide lines now of Rashi. Dikasvinu, why did they need to be written? V'ha leis chad behu dilahavu be kulo arba simanim. Not a single one of those 24 birds has all 4 of these signs the way that the Torah has. Dahachi amrin and lekaman, that we are going to see shortly in the Gemara. Be'esrim minayu ika gimel simanim. That 20 of these birds that are mentioned actually have 3 of the signs of a kosher bird, and yet nonetheless the Torah lists them as a non-kosher bird. Uba orev, and when it comes to the raven, train, it has 2 of the signs of a kosher bird. Uperes uva azniya chad chad. And when it comes to the Peres and the Azniah, they each have only one sign. And so as a result, every one of the 23 birds that are mentioned in the Torah, other than the Nesher, is in fact has a kosher sign, and therefore must we would not need to list them if we were going to learn from the Torah that in order to be kosher you need to have all four signs, because all 23 of these other birds have at least one of the signs, but they do not have all four. So, okay, I hear you. So now the Gemara says, I understand now that we cannot learn from the Torah, because if we learned from the Torah, there would be no point in listing any of the 24 birds, because all of them are missing at least one sign. And of course, the Nesher is missing all four signs. But you need the Nesher in order to indicate what those signs are. So the Nesher and the Torah would still be necessary, but you wouldn't need to list the other 23. But now that we list 20 that have three different signs, V'nelev minayu, let's learn from those 20 birds. Ma hasam tulasa v'lo achlinan, they all have three signs, and yet we don't eat them. Av kol tulasa v'lo nechol. So we'll say that anything that has three kosher signs we're not allowed to eat. And so as a result, the kol shekain trei v'chad, and certainly if it has two or one. So again, same lesson that you need to have all four, but now we'll learn it not from the Torah, but we'll learn it from the 20 birds that have three signs. But im kain, if that were true, Oriv because of Rachmana Lamali. But then why write about the raven? Because after all, the raven has two of those signs. And of course, Orev might not actually be a raven, it might be a different kind of bird. But in any event, the Orev has two of the signs, not three. And so we would know if we listed only the ones that have three kosher signs, we would know that you need to have the Orev is not kosher, because it doesn't even have it only has two signs. It doesn't even have three signs. So hashta to Islay tlusalo achlinan. De'islay trey, me boy. Would I need to even tell you about the fact that if it has two signs, you can't eat it? Of course you can't eat it. And so as a result, the fact that the Torah says that specifically mentions the raven, we know that it can't be that you need to have that three signs indicate a non-kosher animal. Excuse me, please. Thank you. All right. As we turn to Samach Aleph Amud Bet, the Gemara asks, okay, so we don't learn it from the 20 birds that have three kosher signs and the fact that they're not kosher. Learn it from the Orev. The Orev has two signs and they're not kosher. And so as a result, Mahasam Trelo, we can learn from the Orev that just as it has two kosher signs and it's not kosher and we can't eat it, Av kol Trelo, so too, anything that has two kosher signs, we wouldn't be allowed to eat. But if it would have three kosher signs, then we would be allowed to eat it as long as it isn't listed in the Torah. Well, im kain, Peres v'ozniyah, because of Rachmana Lamali. Well, but then why mention the last two birds? The last two birds, the Peres and the Ozniyah, they only have one kosher sign, and yet we cannot eat it. So hashta de islay trey loach lianyan, de islay chad mi boy. After all, if we were learning from the Orev, we would know that you need to have at least two signs. And so if you need to have at least two signs, well then certainly if you only have one sign, it's not kosher. So why does it even bother to mention the Perez and the Ozniyah in the Chumash? The fact that it mentions it shows that even a bird that has one sign could potentially be kosher. So v'nigmar mi Perez v'Ozniyah. So let's learn from the Peres and the Ozniyah and say that this shows that if you have only one sign, you're not going to be kosher, and that you need to have two or more signs for it to be a kosher animal. No, because im kain, nesher because of Rachmana Lamali. Why bother to mention the nesher? Hashta de isle chad lo achlinan. Because after all, if we aren't going to eat something that has one sign, delesle klal mi boy, are we going to eat something that even has one sign? Ella nesher delesle klal hu delo techel. No, the point is that by saying the nesher, it's specifically indicating that only if you have no signs are we not going to eat you. Had isle chad, if it even has one sign, echol, it can be eaten. And so as a result, our derivation is complete. And so we've learned and confirmed exactly what we saw in the first brisa, that we emphasize that as long as you have one of the four qualities of the extra finger, the crop, the membrane on the gizzard, or not clawing and eating, then if you have any one of those four signs and you're not already listed in the Torah, you are a kosher bird. Okay. Vela time because of Rahmana Nesher. All right. But now that we wrote Nesher, ha lav hachi hava amina leilef min peres v'ozniya. 1 second. The fact that we might have if it didn't say, if the Torah didn't tell us the halacha of Nesher, we would have learned from the peres and the ozniya that one sign that you need to, that one sign means not kosher, and that you actually would need to have two signs, because the peres and those niyah are listed as non-kosher birds. They do have one sign, and so as a result, we would have learned from the peres and those niyah to all other birds, except that we also have the nesher written. And so the nesher tells us that actually, as long as you have one sign, it's kosher. So, but havale peres vos niyash ksuvim abon ke'eshbat. But 1 second, by referencing the peres and those niyah, those are two different birds. Ushnei ksuvim abon ke'echad ein melamdin. I thought we generally have a principle that says that when you have two verses in the Torah that teach the same thing, or two phrases in the Torah, or even two words in the Torah that teach the same thing, and here both the peres and the ozniah have one sign that's kosher, and so they would be each coming together to teach us that you need to have two signs in order to be kosher. But we have a principle that two words in the Torah cannot come together to teach us one principle. So as Rashi tells us, Ein Melamdin. Now we're Rashi on, again, Samach Aleph on bet 3, 6, 9 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Ein Melamdin. De'i b'chad siman asi le'oruye. If it was coming to teach us that one siman is not enough, u'lemelef minei detame, and we learn that one sign, kosher sign, indicates a non-kosher bird, lichtov chad, write just one of these birds. Don't write about both the peres and the ozniah. Write just one. The lesi idach, and leave out the minei, and leave out the other one. So why did we reference both of them? No, Gemire, we have a tradition. The Gemara answers that we have a tradition. We are now middle of the line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 lines down in the Gemara. Gemiri de'ika bahai leka bahai. We have a tradition that the Perez has one sign that is different from the sign with the ozniah. Ude'ika bahai leka bahai. And that they are different signs from each other. And so as a result, it's not teaching just one thing. The fact that each of them have different kosher signs, that would be what would allow us to learn that one kosher sign is not enough, and you need to have two kosher signs. As Rashi tells us, next Rashi, Te'ika Bahai Leka Bahai, also siman sheyeshna bezu, the symbol, the sign that one of that kosher sign that one of them has, eino bezeh. It doesn't exist for the other one. Hilkach lav shnei ksuvim aban kechad. Therefore, this does not constitute two separate verses coming to teach one principle. Ninhu, daha mitzrach tzrikin, because we need them. We would need them both. Because of Peres, because if we just learned about the Peres haba amina bahai, I would have thought that when it has bahai simana hu delo techel, that only its sign would be the sign that we would not eat alone. Aval basimana de ozniah, But when it came to the ozniah, which has a different kosher sign, echol, I might have thought you could eat that. So that's why we had to mention the ozniah as well. Because of ozniah, and if it wrote just the ozniah, peres lo asimine, I wouldn't be able to derive that the peres is not kosher from it. The kevan de tarvayu, but tzrichi, and now since we need to have both of them, havamina nelev minayu. That's why we could have learned from them the besimen echad lo techol, that you would not be able to eat. So kasav rachmana nesher. That's why the Torah writes the word nesher to teach us that, you know what, it's not. You don't just need two symbols for it to be signs for it to be a kosher bird. Even one sign is enough as long as it's not on the list. So that is that confirms exactly what we've been saying. So now michti. So let's take a look. We've gotten a list of 24 birds. Esrim v'arba ofos tameim havu. There are 24 non-kosher birds. Efshar.
But that's only one sign. Those two birds each have their own distinctive sign, right?
Correct.
But there are four signs. So
that is absolutely correct.
How do we know about the other two signs? That could also constitute a possibility that we could eat or not eat or whatever it may be.
So you're absolutely right. But the Gemara is here just trying to understand how come we didn't say that there are two psukim that are coming together, and we don't have and we don't learn from two psukim that are coming together. So we didn't have to say that in fact this would have been a good drasha, because at the end of the day the Torah does tell us nesher, and so as a result we never actually learn from these two birds. You're absolutely right. Then maybe when it came to the third and the fourth signs, we would not be able to learn from these two birds that if you had one of those other two signs alone, that you wouldn't be a kosher bird. You are absolutely right. We might not have been able to learn that, but we don't have to go that far, because at the end of the day, we say that we can't learn from these two individual birds, even together, even just about those two signs, because there's the nesher that's mentioned, and we wouldn't need to mention the nesher if we were learning from these two birds. So it can't be that we're learning from these two birds, rather we're learning from the nesher. And the nesher is teaching us that you only need one sign, and it doesn't make a difference which of the signs. So that's the flow of the Gemara. So you're absolutely right. May not have been able to learn from those two birds to all four of the different signs. And maybe if you had one of the other two signs alone, that might have been a kosher bird. But given the fact that we end up having nesher, we end up rejecting the possibility of learning from the Peres and the Ozniah alone. So now back into the Gemara. So michti. So we're going to take a look. We're second to last word on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th line of the Gemara. Michti. Esrim ba'arba ofos tamein havu. There are 24 non-kosher birds. And we know that there are 20 of them that have three signs. So Efshar dechad deika bahanach leika bahanach. Why not say that? And so it's impossible to even consider the fact that none of them would have differences among which of the signs they have. And so as a result, v'havalahu shnei ksuvim haban ke'echad. And so we should still say that we should learn from all of these birds, and why mention the nesher at all? So, Gemiri, we have actually a tradition that explains why we do need to mention the nesher. Meaning, why not say that in all of the cases, there's something that's missing about these birds, and therefore it's telling us that when it comes to these birds, as long as it doesn't matter how many it has, but one for any of the others would be sufficient. So no, but we have a tradition. Esreim ba'arba ofos tamein havu. There are 24 non-kosher birds. Arba simanim. There are 4 signs. Tlasa hadre bekulho. There are 3 signs that exist among all 23 of the birds that are not a nesher. And how do they work out? Esri mehen shlosha shlosha. 20 of the birds have 3 signs. And you know what? It's the same 3 signs for all 20 of the birds. The trey be'orib. And 2 of the signs are with the orib. And you know what? Those 2 signs are among the 3 signs that the other 20 birds have. So none of the 20 birds, and the Gemara never tells us which sign is missing among those 20 other birds. But the 20 birds have 3 signs, and the Orev has 2 signs. Those 2 signs are among the 3 signs. So it's none of them have the 4th sign. And chad beferes, v'chad be'ozniya. And one sign exists with the peres, and one sign exists with the ozniya. De'ise baha, leisi baha. And you know what? The sign that is with one of them doesn't exist in any of the others. And so as a result, we need to have all of them in order to be able to teach us the lesson.
We could learn, an ornithologist could look at his birds and he would say, this is the one sign that's missing.
Except that we don't know we don't know for sure which birds are the 24 birds that are listed in the Torah. So you're absolutely right that if we knew with 100% certainty what the 24 birds are that were listed in the Torah, you're right that we could try and figure it out. But we don't have 100% certainty about those 24 birds.
We don't know what any of them are?
No, we know what some of them are. We just don't know what all of them are.
Right, but if the Gemara tells us that the same sign is missing from all of them, and if we know even can identify one of these 24 birds with some certainty, you look at it and you say, this bird has these 3 signs, doesn't. So therefore, we know, Mamela, that all the other birds are missing that same one sign.
Excellent point. Excellent point. You're right. I'm not 100% sure. When I was going through it, it hadn't occurred to me exactly the question the way you posed it. So I'm not 100% sure. So let me think about it. So ma'odetema leilif minei. So the bottom line is that maybe we should be able to learn from the 23. So again, because of Rahman and Nesher, the bottom line is that's why the Torah wrote the Nesher. Nesher delay slate klal hu delo techal. It's only the Nesher that has no qualities that is the one that we're going to learn from. And if you're for ha'ika de isle chad, if there was even one quality, echol, you can eat from it. So now we have to ask the opposite question. So if in fact we know that the bottom line is that 23 are listed as exeris hakassav, that they're not kosher, even though they have one or more of the kosher signs. The nesher is listed because from it we can learn that as long as you have one sign, you're sufficiently kosher. But what about the Torin? As we say, we're now the second to last line, second word on the line. Ella Torin, the cause of Rahman Alamali. So why did the Torah bother to mention the fact that the Torin has 4 signs? Of course it's kosher. Once we didn't list it among the 24 birds that are not kosher, it's got 4 signs. For sure it's going to be kosher. So Amar Rav Ukva Bar Chama Lekarban. No, what it's telling us is that the Torah is specifically kosher for sacrifices. As Rashi tells us, their last Rashi on the daf, it's 3, 6, 9, about 11 lines up. We're not going to do the whole Rashi, but Lekarban, Shehain Levadan, only them, Ksherim Lekarban, that they are going to be kosher as a sacrifice. Below Ofacher, and not any other bird. Now, I will note that, of course, Bnei Yonah are included in that. It's Torah and Bnei Yonah. But the bottom line is those birds themselves, those are the only birds that are kosher as a sacrifice. And so that is what we learn from the Torah, and as opposed to just deriving it from the fact that it's not listed among the 23 or 24 birds that are not kosher. And so as a result, we specifically mentioned the Torah in order to tell us that that's the kind of bird that you can use as a sacrifice, not other kinds of birds. So we will pick up. So now the Gemara is going to continue its discussion of what constitutes a kosher signs and how we figure out what birds they are. But for that discussion, you'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf.
Is that the only bird one is allowed to eat them, the Taurian?
No, no. Again, the tauren are the only bird that you can offer as a sacrifice. Any bird that is not one of the 23 birds that are listed and have one or more kosher signs, if it has at least one kosher sign and isn't in the list of 23, then it's kosher. The problem is that we don't know for certainty what those 23 birds are, and so as a result, we follow the what our tradition tells us. And so thankfully, chicken, duck, turkey, etc., those are we understand to be kosher, but ostrich, etc., storks and the like, we do not have a tradition that those animals are kosher, and as a result, we don't say that those are kosher animals.
24 birds, we said the Torah says, right? 23, 24?
The Torah mentions 24. One of them is the Nesher.
Right, okay.
And from it, we derive that one sign is sufficient.
Right.
The other 23 have at least one sign and are still not kosher. And so as a result, if something has one sign, two signs or three signs, well, then you need to make sure that it's not on the list. If it has four signs, well, then you're looking at a Torah.
Is that the only bird that has four signs?
Well, that seems to be what Rashi was saying at the end, that it may be the only bird that has all four signs, or that any bird that has four signs is part of the Torah family, just like any bird that has no signs is part of the Nesher family.
But
all right.
The Torah.
Yes.
The Torah eaten? I don't. Can it be eaten?
Well, the Torah is understood generally to be like the pigeon.
I know.
So I don't think we actually eat that bird. Not very much meat on it. So I'm not aware of it being eaten. But the bottom line is whether it can be eaten is sort of slightly a different question.
I mean, if it meets all the criteria and it can be offered as a korban, maybe it could be.
Oh, absolutely. No question.
Maybe it could be eaten. Maybe.
Absolutely, it could be eaten. I think that to the extent that there is agreement that the pigeon is the bird that is referenced, I'm sure that they could be eaten. My guess is that it's just not a very meaty bird, and so as a result, it never developed a practice to eat it.
And if someone did nothing else to eat, but but then that would apply. I mean, if someone is, I don't know, in difficult straits and it's a pikuach nefesh, then it wouldn't really matter. Wet bird.
Correct. Correct. But obviously, if you have choices, if you're in a pikuach nefesh situation, but you have choices, then you should always choose the one that would be kosher. So that would be a nafkamina that would highlight the point that you're making, which is generally that if you can. That there would be a situation where if you needed food and you had a bunch of pigeons that pigeon cote, then you would be able to use those pigeons as food if necessary. All right, wishing you a wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.